And then Friday night, late Friday night, just days before this upcoming hearing about Bill Barr intervening in the course of justice to try to benefit the president, late Friday night, classic Friday night news dump, Attorney General Barr rolls out this absolutely botched effort to try to fire the head of the other most important federal prosecutor's office in the country, right? He succeeded in decapitating the U.S. Attorney's office in D.C. and getting rid of its independence, taking it over, installing all his own people, making that office do the president's favors. That's the D.C. U.S. Attorney's office. Barr won there. The other prosecutor's office that most touches the president's interests is, obviously, the prosecutor's office that named President Trump Individual 1 in the Michael Cohen case, the prosecutor's office that described the president as the person who directed the commission of those felonies that put the president's personal lawyer in federal prison for those illegal hush money payments he made during the 2016 campaign. It's the same prosecutor's office that recently brought charges against our friends Lev and Igor for allegedly funneling hundreds of thousands of dollars in illegal contributions to Republican campaigns and the main super PAC supporting President Trump's reelection. They did those things, according to prosecutors, while they were working with the president's other personal lawyer on the Ukraine scheme for which the president was impeached back in December. This is the same prosecutor's office that has reportedly been investigating the president's lawyer himself, Rudy Giuliani, as to, among other things, whether he was illegally acting as a foreign agent while also working as the president's lawyer, ginning up this scheme for which the president has already been impeached. This is the same prosecutor's office that subpoenaed President Trump's inaugural committee as part of what appears to be an investigation into potentially illegal foreign contributions to the president's inaugural committee as well. It's also the same prosecutor's office that in September is due to take up the bizarre case of this Chicago small-time banker who allegedly tried to buy himself an appointment as Trump's Secretary of the Army by giving Trump's campaign chairman, convicted felon Paul Manafort, millions of dollars in bogus loans as a bribe. That trial of Stephen Kalk is due to start in September in the Southern District of New York. When Attorney General William Barr announced late on Friday night that the U.S. Attorney in the Southern District of New York was, quote, stepping down, he was apparently ham-handedly trying to force that U.S. Attorney into stepping down, into resigning, so that he could slot his own guys into that office, much like he did in the U.S. Attorney's office in D.C. But he botched it. It did not work out well. He didn't do it right. I mean, Barr said in this late-night statement on Friday night that Jeffrey Berman had resigned. Jeffrey Berman had not, and he very soon made that publicly clear. Barr then said, well, okay, if I'm not firing you, the president has fired you. Barr then said in writing that President Trump had fired Jeffrey Berman. The president himself then directly contradicted that and said, no, I didn't. I didn't have anything to do with it. I mean, among other things, Jeff Berman fought back against whatever this is that Attorney General William Barr has just tried to pull off. Jeff Berman fought back in such a way that now his deputy, a woman named Audrey Strauss, will be keeping control of that office rather than Barr being allowed to put in his hand-picked replacements. But with all those cases in SDNY, all those ongoing cases that pertain to the president's interests, and honestly, the prospect that if the president is going to be indicted for anything that he did while he was in office, that he would be indicted after being voted out of office in November once he was no longer president. If you were expecting any sort of indictment for anything the president did while in office, that would likely come from the Southern District of New York. But hey, the year is young. I mean, with William Barr's legitimately horrifying record of intervening in matters of justice on the president's say-so and on the president's behalf, the one way William Barr most badly botched this whole thing is that he forgot to come up with any explanation for why he was trying to fire that prosecutor and take over that office with his own guys. He didn't even cook up a cover story. And now, Judiciary Chairman Jerry Nadler says he has opened an investigation into what exactly William Barr has done this time. Oops.